Hello, CSISD percussionists. This is Mr. Taylor from CSMS, and the purpose of this video is to introduce you to the snare drum audition etude. Now, this music is actually one piece of music that's broken into smaller chunks. They're called the theme, variation 1, variation 2, and so on. Now, we're going to be introducing the theme and variation 1 to you today. The video was broken up into two separate sections. The first is the instruction section, in which I will be counting through the music with you and pointing out some of the specific things that you need to watch out for in terms of technique and dynamics and other things. And the second half of the video is going to be Mr. Weckesser for AMCMS actually performing this music for you. Some things we want you to know or to watch out for. Is we want you to be aware of your tempo. Now, whenever you practice anything, you want to go slow enough to be able to get from the beginning to the end with as few mistakes as you can manage. So that means go slow. He will perform the music at 60, 70, and 80 beats per minute, but you just need to know that you need to go as slow as you need to get your best approximation of the music or the portion of it we're doing today. Always practice with a Met. There are many apps out there, many free apps that you can get for your device, but you need to always practice with a Met because we will be able to tell if you have a steady pulse or not whenever we actually get to listening to your actual audition. Three key concepts we're going to look at today are your technique, your stickings, and your dynamics, and we'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. Before we move on, I want you to be very, very aware. This is not your audition. This is just a tutorial to help you figure things out. We're going to start with dynamics because dynamics are very important, and in talking with Mr. Weckesser, I realized that between his school and my school, and maybe even Welborn Middle School, we teach them slightly different, but they can be combined. What we want you to think about is in terms of dynamics, a piano should be played about 2 inches like we do at CSMS, and it should be near the edge or the rim of the drum like they do at AMCMS. Mezzo piano, 3 inches, about a third of the distance from the edge to the center. Mezzo forte can be played at 6 inches, about 2/3 of the distance from the edge to the center. And forte can be about 9 inches in the actual center of the drum. If you were ever to need to play softer, you could stay at the edge and just play at 1 inch. If you needed to play louder than forte, you could play in the center at 12 inches. To find the music, you could search online, WTAMU Bandcamp Audition 2020. This should take you to the WTAMU site. Be sure that the music or the page you're on says 2020 or even year audition music. They have 2 sets of music and we don't want you to find the wrong one. When you get to that page, be sure that you choose the column that says middle school and choose the music for both snare drum and keyboard. Now, 8th graders, you're going to be moving up into high school, and your high school director should have sent you drumline audition music for next year. And honestly, that's what you need to be working on. You can watch this video if you like, but it's not going to help you specifically with the music you're doing, as it's totally different from what the 6th and 7th graders are going to be doing. Now, here's how it works. As I mentioned, this is one piece of music, but it's broken into smaller sections, and we're going to be handling the first 2 sections today. The theme is actually the first 7 measures. Now, they don't include titles here like they do with the other musical parts, but you can tell the sections by looking for these double bar lines. That double bar line at the end of measure 7 means that's the end of the theme. This double bar line 4 measures later at the end of measure 12 is the end of variation 1. So today we're going to be focusing on just these first 2 sections, the theme and variation 1. Now let's talk about things like technique, stickings, and dynamics. Technique refers to how you play the individual elements that make up, in this case, the snare drum etude. First of all, accents versus taps. We see some of those right here in measure 15 with these paradiddles. More specifically, we see them down here in measure 29 and again in measure 35. Now, when you're talking about accents versus taps, you need to make sure that there is a good contrast of height between the two. In this case, we're in mezzo piano, which means that your accent would be about 3 inches high. So the taps have to be about 1 inch or less if you can manage, but you still have to be able to play in control. Now let's talk about your rolls. Almost all of the rolls in this piece are multiple bounce or buzz rolls, as is indicated here by the Z on the stem, or in some case it would be a Z above the note head. That means it'll be multiple bounce roll, as I mentioned. More importantly for you, you need to keep in mind that we're going to have you play all of the check patterns for these rolls at 16th notes. Now, that means that you would count this as 3 ta ta ta, 4 ta 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 1. Remember, a check pattern is simply the rhythm that your hands would play if you were not doing multiple bounces. Okay? Moving on to double bounces now. Double bounces are what you see here indicated by the single slash on the stem of these notes. Now, a double bounce is exactly what it says, or a double stroke is exactly what it says. They are 2 strokes per 1 wrist motion. In this case, if you count it out, these actually end up being 5-stroke rolls on the upbeat. 1, ta, 2, ta, 1. If you played it, it would sound like this though. Dot, 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 dot. This is the only measure in the piece where you actually have to worry about using a metered roll or an open roll or double bounces, as we mentioned. So keep that in mind when you get to that spot. Lastly, with flams, as we have up here in measure 1, a flam is always defined by a difference in height between the grace note and the primary stroke. Now, as I've mentioned before, almost all of these technical elements are defined by whether or not, or what the dynamic is. In this case, at mezzo forte, this primary stroke would be about 6 inches. The grace note needs to stay about 1 inch. And as Mr. Weckesser would say, set it and forget it. Set those heights, drop them, and that will give you your flam. Now, we're going to take some time and we're actually going to turn on the Met and we're going to count through these first 2 lines. Remember, measure 1 to 7 to this point is the theme, and measure 8 to measure 12 is going to be variation 1. Down, up, theme, and go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 ta ta ta, 4 ta ta ta, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3 ta ta ta, 4 ta ta ta, 1, 2, 3 ta ta ta, 4 ta ta ta, 1, 2, 3 ta ta ta, 4 ta ta ta, 1, 1, 2 ta ta, 3 ta, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 ta ta, 3, 4, 1, 2 ta, 3 ta, 4 ta, 1, 2, 3. Now in this case, I counted this flam and this flam both as half notes because that's what the composer intended. But of course, on a snare drum, they would last just for that moment. And in this case right here, Mr. Weckesser and I believe that this is a mistake. There's no reason for that tie to be there at the end of that flam. So just play it like a normal flam. Other things that we would like you to be very aware of as you play through, notice and remember that anytime the composer indicates a specific sticking, like in the case of these paradiddles and these paradiddles, you're expected to do that specific sticking. Otherwise, Mr. Weckesser, as you will see in the video, is going to follow basically a right hand natural sticking, which means that in cases like this, these independent quarter notes would be just all rights for the sake of a uniform sound. When we come down here, and we have eighth notes added in, he's going to probably play this as right, right, left, right, left, right, left. And these would probably end up being right, right, right. Just be sure you watch the video. Now, when we get down into situations where we have a matter of 16th notes added in, it is very possible, as in this case in 22, in this case in 23, he may play these eighth notes as both right hands, right, 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 left, right, left. That is just so he can keep the flow going from this eighth note rhythm to these 16th note rhythms. Just pay attention to the video. Now, at this point, we need to mention, as percussionists, as you probably are all fully expected, you will also be responsible for performing the keyboard etude for us. Now, the keyboard etude, we're not producing a recording of that, but Miss Seal from Welborn Middle School has actually produced a woodwind video that includes the exact same music that you will be playing for your keyboard etude. I've watched the video and she actually addresses percussion specific things. The main thing you need to keep in mind is that there are certain terms she may use, like at one point she mentioned slurs for her wind students. You as percussionists, of course, can't play slurs, but what you can do instead is make sure that you're playing with a nice, smooth legato stroke. Anytime you're playing a roll that leads to a single stroke or another roll, if it's under a slur mark, you just make sure that there's no gap in between. If there's no slur mark between those rolls or that roll and that note, you can leave a little bit of space. Now, it's different having a wind person demonstrate on their instrument and you reproducing it on your marimba, but it still works totally fine. Just be sure that you try to mimic the style that she is producing with her flute when you're practicing. In fact, with both Mr. Weckesser and Miss Seal's videos, feel free to pick a tempo that you can handle and follow along with them. It's kind of a fun way to do it, but it's also a quick way to pick up on all the little subtle nuances that need to go into your piece. And it will make it sound much better when you do that. Now, this seems like a lot. Don't worry about it. This is something we do at this time of year every year, and we have made it a goal to be sure that we introduce this to you a little bit at a time. That's why this week you're only getting those first two sections. Next week, you'll get one section. The week after that, you'll get another section. It's just important that you take your time, practice with your metronome, go as slow as you need to, but try to keep up with each new section that we introduce in each week, and it will keep you on top of your game. If we haven't made it clear to you guys, we really do miss seeing you. It's hard to not see you improve and grow every single day when we're at school. If nothing else, just keep playing. Get into your binder, pick out an oldie but a goodie, and just play through that. Check out Smart Music that we've introduced to you. That really is a lot of fun. There's a ton of material, and you're going to be surprised the type of stuff that you would find, not to mention the fact that the computer will play most often a full band accompaniment when you're actually playing through that piece of music. You need to check it out. Pick out Mario Brothers on your instrument, but just play. You need to be playing at least a little bit, preferably every day, but if not, every other day. You have a gift in the skill that you have, and if you don't keep sharpening that skill, it will start to diminish. So get on your instrument and play. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and transition over to the portion of the video where Mr. Weckesser is playing your etudes for you. You guys stay safe, and we hope to see you soon. Bye.
Measures 1 through 12 at quarter note equals 60. Measures 1 through 12 at quarter note equals 70. One through 12 at quarter note equals 80.